All right, we've alluded to this a number of times in the show. Let's go ahead and break down the news for you. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is coming back to the U.S. If he's not here already, let's go ahead and put this up on the screen from Axios. Wrongly deported Kilmar Abrego Garcia returning to the U.S. to face criminal charges. So he's on his way back, according to a newly unsealed indictment. His deportation, they say, to El Salvador has been a flashpoint, you might say, in President Trump's immigration agenda. That indictment alleges that Abrego Garcia, who lives in Maryland, made more than 100 trips transporting undocumented immigrants between Texas and Maryland, among other states. According to Attorney General Pam Bondi, citing co-conspirators' testimony, Abrego Garcia also allegedly abused undocumented immigrant women and solicited nude photographs and videos from a minor. Let's go ahead and put this indictment up on the screen. I did read through it. You know, we'll see what evidence they proffer, but here USA Today says Attorney General says Kilmar Abrego was part of international smuggling ring. This goes back to, there was some footage that was released of him where he was stopped while he was driving, and he had a number of people in the car. It was a vehicle that had been modified to allow more people to be there. He wasn't apprehended or anything at the time, but they considered it sort of fishy because the people did not seem to have luggage with them. I believe he said that he was bringing them to a job or something like that. Right. So that's sort of the context of what the indictment centers around. We do know that there was one prosecutor who was meant to be involved with this, put D4 up on the screen, who resigned over the decision to pursue this indictment, led to the abrupt departure of Ben Schrader, high-ranking federal prosecutor in Tennessee. Schrader's resignation was prompted by concerns the case was being pursued for political reasons, according to sources. I think this was NBC News that reported this out, but I can't remember specifically. So anyway, we'll see what happens with the charges. We'll see whether they have sufficient evidence to actually, find him guilty of these alleged crimes. But obviously, the fact that they felt, after they said, absolutely no way is this man coming back, that they felt enough pressure to bring him home, both from the public and from the court system, is quite extraordinary. And so now he will go through the court system. He will have his due process. A jury of his peers will evaluate the evidence against him, and he will have his day in court. And ultimately, Saagar, that's really all that anyone was asking for.
I think it's extraordinary that they buckled and they ended up bringing him back. I mean, it is pretty crazy because they said he wasn't going to. But I mean, at the end of the day, the Supreme Court order was pretty unambiguous. They're like, he needs to be returned to the United States of America because he was deported in violation of this order. I mean, even for me, somebody like me, considering how many twists and turns we've had here with Abrego Garcia, I'm like, I wonder whether he stands a pretty damn good chance in court, because they have alleged all kinds of things, right? Like, I mean, even if you look at the original, it was like he was being deported, he was a member of MS-13, I mean, like, maybe, but then he was a human trafficker, and then he was a wife beater. I mean, look, it's complicated, right? He's never been accused or whatever of any of these things, but this is another step where they're alleging effectively that he's like some master human trafficker, and they had never originally said that. Now, it's possible that it's true because they've probably spent the time since to gather evidence. Maybe they thought it was a PR victory to be able to gather, use the full force of the FBI, gather all this evidence. I will say, if he does get convicted of this, it's not going to look good, right? It's stuff going to be a narrative violation for a lot of people. It's not some Maryland father or whatever that they're trying to use here. But broadly, look, this is what I was talking about with LA. What they did with El Salvador, and then eventually the falling apart of a lot of the narrative around El Salvador, really burned a lot of their credibility. I wouldn't say necessarily with the public, but definitely the media. Because at that point, look, you had a situation where everybody knew Trump was going to pursue deportations. You knew he was going to do some extraordinary action, et cetera, et cetera. But with the falling apart of many of the cases, and in particular with a lot of the evidentiary, stuff that they used, and then the eventual defeats over and over again at the Supreme Court level for the actual process by which this was done, I mean, I think it's basically comparable to 2002 Guantanamo Bay. Like, if we really think about it, where anybody who was in Afghanistan or anybody who was like, that guy's a terrorist, eventually ended up in Guantanamo. And it's kind of crazy because some 23 years later, you would have thought especially for an administration that kind of prides itself as being anti the Bush administration, effectively recreated a lot of this stuff. That's something Glenn Greenwald in particular really talked about. And I mean, obviously that's what changed a lot of my thoughts on this, and in particular now since the fallout. But the fact that they did have to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back is evidence that the court matters still. I think public pressure, media as well. Yeah. It was undeniable. Like, let's be honest, it was genuinely undeniable. It's like, you're not supposed to be deported. And he got deported. I mean, and I'm not saying not supposed to. I'm saying as in legally had a hold on him. He can come back to the United States. He will now face a jury in a trial. We'll see how it all works out. Yeah. But yeah, just broadly, you cannot look at this. They're trying to play it as like, it's a victory. No, this is a massive L for the Trump administration. Like, you said you weren't going to do it, and you brought him back. There's no getting around it. Yeah. Period. End of story.
And I want to be really clear about what he's actually being charged with in this indictment. Which again, to see the evidence, because Lord knows that it's possible they ginned this up because they needed some sort of pretext to make it look like they're not completely folding.
But that is
to the
benefit of going
pressure.
through the American federal system. It's like, look, the federal court is not a joke. Like, even if it's a political prosecution, you have to produce
They're going to have to prove their case.
You have to produce it. And now, I mean, this is look, I mean, Abrego Garcia can do what he wants, but go to trial, because then we'll all see it. If you just plead guilty, we're not going to see any of this. But yeah, you should go to trial for a public interest, or at the very least, his defense attorney should release all the discovery and all that stuff that they have. Because at this point, that is obviously owed to the public.
Yeah. So they're indicting him on conspiracy to unlawfully transport illegal aliens for financial gain and unlawful transportation of illegal aliens for financial gain. So basically the core of the indictment alleges that he was transporting people that he knew to be undocumented between different states. So, this is like, a nitpicky thing. They keep calling him a trafficker. A trafficker is someone who's doing this against people's will. There's no allegation here that these were people who, were being smuggled against their will. It's more that he was transporting them and knowing that these were undocumented immigrants. That's what the indictment says. But the reason I want to clarify that is because Pam Bondi in the news conference about this made all sorts of wild allegations tying him to a murder and this and that different thing, even though none of that is in this indictment whatsoever. Again, to try to project this image like he's some high-level MS-13 gang member and, going way beyond what they were even able to obtain an indictment for. Let's go ahead and listen to a little bit of that press conference and some of the pushback she got at the end.
Maybe I misunderstood you, but you were mentioning, that he had some involvement in a murder, or was connected to groups that had, involved with this other smuggling ring. But to be clear, the only charges he's facing right now are the, human smuggling charges. Just that's the one offense. But the other things that you have talked about are not actually in the indictment?
No, co-conspirators allege that. And we were clear to say that he is charged with, it's not only very serious charges of alien smuggling.
So those are the specifics. The other thing that I would say, Saagar, about this is, you have Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You also have some 200 plus other people who were shipped to CICA with zero due process. Many of whom we already know had zero criminal record. According to the analysis that's done by multiple news organizations, the vast majority of them did not have criminal records either here or abroad. They searched the databases of a number of countries. And, there's an effort in the courts. There was a ruling actually from the judge here in DC, Judge Boasberg, to say you've got to give them a chance to also, file a habeas corpus. They have to be able to challenge their detention as well. They have to be able to get some sort of due process. Supreme Court has said they were entitled that, and they did not receive it. So the other thing that I think is significant here is kind of a crack in the foundation, because previously it was just like, once you're gone, and that's it, and we're not doing nothing about it. So the fact that they did and are bringing this one person back, I think also, opens up a crack in terms of the narrative here. And then the last thing we mentioned a couple of times, just so you can see for yourself, they were adamant. There is no way, under no circumstance, is Kilmar Abrego Garcia coming home. Here is Secretary Kristi Noem saying exactly that. Let's take a listen.
Should never have been in this country and will not be coming back to this country. There is no scenario where Abrego Garcia will be in the United States again. If he were to come back, we would immediately deport him again because he is a terrorist, he's a human smuggler, and he is a wife beater.
There is no scenario where he will be coming back to this country. Guess what? Here we are a few weeks later, and he is coming back.
It is nuts. I mean, it's literally Gitmo, right? We went worst to the worst. What percent of people have been released from Guantanamo? I forget. It's like probably 70 or 80%. They're like, we're going to prosecute him. And then they're like, oh, actually, we have to drop all the charges because there was torture involved here. And actually, we can't prove a lot of this stuff. I agree. I mean, this is basically, if we're following the same playbook, we have 02. Then by 03, you start to see some releases and some legal justification, and eventually the bar cracks in the legal system. 2006, I think it's Hamdi v. Rumsfeld, where about habeas corpus. Now that they don't even need to go through all of that, right? Because that's already here. Law of the land, there's going to be some legal process. The fact that you haven't had some sort of CCOT level removal since that time is obviously also evidence of what's happening. But I mean, I know there's been some. I forget. I was vaguely aware. What was it, Djibouti or something, like they were sent South Sudan or something, but I think it's not the same. But especially legally, you can correct me if I'm wrong. They're taking a lot of problems in the court system, and I think that's this is part of what you will eventually see.
Yeah. So extraordinary development all the way around. So listen, guys, we'd planned to talk about Theo Von, but we've got our guests waiting. We have the spokesperson from that Gaza aid flotilla who we really want to talk to. So I'll let the bros handle the bro podcast.
Well, I was going to say, maybe it's fitting.
So it's kind
a bro
of appropriate.
Podcast.
I'll exempt myself from that conversation.
Although I think Theo gets unfairly lumped into the manosphere. I think he's actually very funny. Not even in a bro.
Say he's not funny.
No, but I'm saying the New York Times people kind of put him in a manosphere. He's not like a creatine body, you know what I'm saying? Like to me, Rogan is much more like of a bro, just in terms of his life and like kind of the podcast and UFC. But and I know Theo attends all of that, but like I actually think he's a very funny person who does not rely on like bro comedy.
Genuinely, I don't really consume his content outside of the things that are political. And
I would tell you, I think you would like his. Out of all of the major ones,
really?
His is probably the least political to me. He only goes viral for,
I'm not interested in anything that's not political.
Oh, it's fun. I'm telling you, it's funny. I mean, it's funny.
Yeah.
He had like Timothy Chalamet on his podcast. They actually had a good conversation.
How would you compare him with Tim Dillon?
I think Tim is a lot. I mean, Tim is to me is more of like a George Carlin-esque figure.
Or intellectual.
Well, he is political in that I've seen his stand-up, and actually I was surprised when the first time I saw his whole set. It was not nearly as political as a lot of his podcasts, but he is like Carlin-esque, and he likes to point out the absurdity of a lot of politicians and a lot of like public-facing media. I have not ever seen Theo, any of his stand-up, like live or anything like that, but I would be willing to guess just based on his podcast and all that. It's a little bit more of like a societal observation. So yeah, anyway, I think out of all of the so-called bro podcasters, I actually think he's the least political in terms of his normal content. He does have a lot of politicians on, but I think it's noteworthy if we remember when Trump came on, that's when Theo was talking about like being a drug addict and cocaine and stuff like that. That's really more of his thing. You know, he has on like therapists, and he has actually on some pretty interesting people. I think he has some good guests. So Theo, keep it up, man. I actually think you're very good at what you do.
All right. Yeah. All that being said, that convo will happen tomorrow. Let's go ahead and get to the latest with this Gaza aid flotilla. All right, guys, 2 quick things. Number 1, by popular demand, we are bringing back the monthly subscription. Number 2, you can get a month free, Ryan, by putting in that promo code BPFree at breakingpoints.com.
Yeah, and I think the most important reason to become a premium subscriber is just as an act of support for the show. It helps us do what we're doing. But if you're curious what the benefits are of doing it, take the free month, and you'll see you get the AMAs, you get the second half of the Friday show, you get the full show emailed to you earlier. It makes your life much better. Do it for a month at breakingpoints.com. BP free is a promo code. And if after a month your life isn't dramatically improved, you can just cancel. If it is, it's just $10 a month.
There you go.